Hey friends, it's good to be with you for another one of our conversations before General Conference. My name is Jonathan Page. I am the Director of Connectional Ministries for Innovation and Creativity, and today I'm here with my friends Mark Elder and Rob Vaughn, and they are from our annual conference, and they're going to be talking with us about one of the themes of the work of General Conference this year, which is human sexuality. And so that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today. So thank you all for being here. I wonder if you just introduce yourself to folks from the Virginia Conference who are watching this. Mark, tell us a little bit about you and your role in the conference and the delegation.
Yes, I'm from the Alexandria City area. And in my local church, I am our lay leader, and I'm also delegate to annual conference. And then for my role at General Conference, I'm a lay delegate, one of the 11 lay delegates to General Conference.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark. And Rob, how about you?
Hey, I'm Rob Vaughn. I'm an elder in the conference and one of our clergy delegates to this year's General Conference.
Great. And so just as we're kind of getting started, I wonder if you all would just kind of frame up the topic of human sexuality. It's something that we've kind of been talking about in the United Methodist Church for some time. Why does this continue to be a topic of conversation in 2024?
Where do you begin, Mark?
It is a topic of conversation because for the last 50 years, there has continued to be legislation added to our Book of Discipline that is discriminatory against the LGBTQ community. But I want to say something else about that too, because I was looking back at the discipline before this interview, and I want to note that there's also been a little bit of a tug of war. That yes, there has been language added that's restrictive or discriminatory. The incompatibility clause, prohibitions on ordaining LGBTQ pastors, conducting weddings, but at the same time, there has been language added to the Book of Discipline that notes that all people are of sacred worth. There's wonderful inclusive language at the beginning of Part 4 of our Book of Discipline that talks about a very inclusive church. And in one of the most recent versions of the Book of Discipline, there is also language about bullying and talking about how the church doesn't support bullying, and it mentions sexual orientation specifically. So there's been an interesting tension of adding discriminatory language around human sexuality while at the same time it's almost as if the General Conference is like, whoa, did we go too far? And then putting in language that's much more embracing.
And that tension is easily illustrated with a social principle statement on the rights of homosexual persons. So in the public arena of housing or discrimination or banking, the church has helped uphold those rights. Yet for persons within the church, in places such as clergy persons, ordination, the rights of clergy to do weddings, it hasn't been. This 2024 General Conference is in many ways reactive to the 2019 General Conference. Many delegations, like Virginia, have seen persons elected in response to the 2019 where the traditional plan was passed. 2019, as many of you will remember, in the traditional plan became far more harsh in terms of some of the perennial questions like what happens to clergy who do same-gender weddings or issues of ordination and such. So much of what we'll see is reactive to that. And so some of the proposals are proposals seeking to undo some of that traditional language and be far more open and welcoming to persons, because we realize that compromises our evangelical outreach in many of the communities in which we serve.
Yeah, and that's a really good segue. Thank you all for that. What you just mentioned, Rob, is that there are a number of proposals and petitions that are coming before the General Conference around human sexuality. So, this is kind of a brief 5-minute video. We don't have time to get into all of those, but I wonder if you could kind of characterize what are some of those broad initiatives that are kind of being worked towards around human sexuality and the proposals before the 2024 General Conference.
Sure, I'll start and just note that one thing that'll be before General Conference is a revision to the social principles. Mm-hmm. And in that revision, a lot of the discriminatory language is neutralized. So I think that's a really important starting point that's going to drive a lot of the work around human sexuality are those revised social principles. Mm-hmm.
And that specifically is around the area of marriage. One, the definition of marriage is one of those points where the revised social principles speaks of marriage between two persons. And the second part is the removal of inhospitality, the incompatibility language, where it says those two pieces, marriage definition and incompatibility, are the two big parts in the revised social principles, which you can actually find if you haven't seen it before on the umjustice.org website. That's the website for General Board of Global Ministries. And you can find it in one of 8 languages and read it for yourself. It's umcjustice.org. Just look for Revised Social Principles. There are a few other areas as well, things like prohibitions against clergy doing same-gender weddings, of United Methodist churches being able to host such, some other languages that is related. That there's probably 10 or 12 areas in which legislation is seeking to neutralize or remove some language that has often been perceived and is harmful.
Sure. And as we think about that, there always, whenever we have legislation before us, there are implications related to that. So there's always, I have a toddler at home, so we're dealing with consequences right now. There are good consequences and bad consequences. Can you talk a little bit about kind of the consequences of the legislation that's before us and what that means for the future of the church?
Can you go first?
Sure. The consequences are pretty serious. In many places, many of our churches are in places and with other denominations. We're interestingly enough, the largest Christian body in the world that will ordain women but doesn't ordain gay folks. Many of our places are places where our evangelical witness to the community is compromised because of our denominational stance about the role of LGBTQIA persons in the life of the church. So, and some of our churches are just sort of hanging on, waiting a long time to say, we just cannot live in this way. So the question of settling some questions on LGBTQIA plus inclusion has incredible consequence for churches who want to stay United Methodist and embrace a gospel that is consistent with loving everyone. And so a lot of consequences for local congregations.
Yeah.
And I would add to that, I think, I'm thinking of the younger generations. In particular, I think where General Conference lands on this issue of welcoming all people is going to matter a lot. I know in my local church and in where I live up in Northern Virginia, there are members of local churches who will not join their church because of our current stance on issues of welcoming all. And in addition, we've even had in my church, and I've heard this happen in other churches too, confirmands who've gone through the confirmation process but have not become members of their church because of the positions of the United Methodist Church today around welcoming. So I think there's going to be huge consequences to attracting those generations of people into the United Methodist Church.
And that's been the similar in the churches most recently that I pastored.
Yeah.
Mark has said it well. There are significant consequences for the future. And also that our Book of Discipline and our proclamation has been inconsistent. We say all persons are of sacred worth, and yet the way we live that out has not lived up to our basic foundational theological statement that all persons, because they are the sons and daughters of the living God, all persons are of sacred worth. And that inconsistency has been damaging to our public witness.
Well, I think that might be a great word to close on. That this is an opportunity that's before us to bring some alignment to our theology and our practice of our faith, and so I'm really grateful, Mark and Rob, for your witness today and for sharing with us in the Virginia Annual Conference. Friends, if you are interested in more resources about legislation related to human sexuality or any General Conference legislation, I invite you to visit umc.org, where you can find all of our videos about the themes related to General Conference, and soon we'll also have posted some podcasts there for if you're interested in some of the particular legislative committee work that's forthcoming at General Conference. That'll be there as well. So, Rob, Mark,
let me just add one other piece. Our conversation so far on human sexuality has been on LGBTQIA plus inclusion, but there are also a whole host of other issues relating to human sexuality that are present. Issues about harassment and bullying and sexual misconduct. Issues on pornography, issues relating to reproductive health. So while our conversation just now has been about inclusion, there's still a host of other related issues about human sexuality that the General Conference will be covering, often in resolutions, but also in some other parts of legislation.
Great. Thank you for sharing that, Rob. So again, visit our conference website for more information about what Rob's just shared. And Rob, Mark, thank you so much for your time. And we'll be back again real soon with another video about themes of General Conference. For now, thank you for tuning in. Have a great day. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.